In this process of reopening, our church, like most places, is working hard to figure out how to adapt the online ministries that we've created during COVID so that they fit this new hybrid world which we are about to enter, a world that blends both in-person activities with online programming. And one of the changes we made in the past month involved the church's coffee hour program. During COVID, when fears and anxieties ran incredibly high, the church knew that some needed a great deal of support each day. So we instituted a daily coffee at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time that gave people who needed it a place to check in with each other and feel connected. As the stay-at-home order was lifted last month, we realized that people no longer needed a daily outlet. So we tweaked the coffee hour program and moved the gatherings to just Mondays and Friday afternoons from 3 to 4 p.m., again, Pacific Daylight Time. The change in frequency of the program wasn't the only change we made, however. We knew that we needed a change in format as well. So we adopted a format much like the weekday television show called The View, where after a short check-in period, we focus on one or two hot topics for the day. Now I've stepped into the role of Whoopi Goldberg as moderator, and well, I'll let the other participants decide who is Joy, Sunny, Sarah, and Megan. So in one of our 2 coffee hours this past week, we talked about the struggle in this country to make sense of our past. There are those in our country, it seems, who want to focus only on the positive accomplishments of the past. Things like our financial achievements in achieving world dominance and the role that we played at the end of World War II to help establish or reestablish global order. There are others, however, who want to talk about all the ways that we have failed to be our best selves through efforts like the 1619 Project and conversations about something called critical race theory. So which way is it? I asked the group as I channeled Whoopi Goldberg. Do we best honor our roots by focusing on just the positive? Or can there be value in objectively examining the what was on our journey to embrace the what could be? Of course, in the days leading up to the 4th of July, our coffee hour group wasn't the first to struggle with that sort of question. Or in this morning's reading from the Gospel of Mark, Jesus and the disciples wrestled with the challenge of revisiting one's roots as together they traveled back to Jesus' hometown. And while the experience didn't go exactly as planned, there is much wisdom that we can draw from today's gospel reading. So listen carefully as I read the lesson, and then let's come back together and see how we might apply those lessons to this 4th of July weekend. Here now, Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 13, as read from the Common English Bible. Jesus left that place and came to his hometown. His disciples followed him. On the Sabbath, Jesus began to teach in the synagogue. Many who heard him were surprised. Where did this man get all this? What's this wisdom he's been given? What about the powerful acts accomplished through him? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't he Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? They were repulsed by Jesus and fell into sin. Jesus said to them, "Prophets are honored everywhere except in their own hometowns, among their relatives, and in their own households." He was unable to do any miracles there, except that he placed his hands on a few sick people and healed them. He was appalled by their disbelief. Then Jesus traveled through the surrounding villages, teaching. He called for the 12 and sent them out in pairs. He gave them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing for their journey except a walking stick, no bread, no bags, and no money in their belts. He told them to wear sandals, but not to put on 2 shirts. Jesus said, "Whatever house you enter, remain there until you leave that place. If a place doesn't welcome you or listen to you, as you leave, shake the dust off your feet as a witness against them." So they went out and proclaimed that people should change their hearts and lives. They cast out many demons, and they anointed many sick people with olive oil and healed them. Thus ends the sacred reading. So, friends, what lessons might we draw from this morning's gospel reading that can help us think about this process of revisiting our roots? Well, Michael Linval, in his powerful commentary in the Gospel of Mark that I've been using the past couple weeks, said that in order to answer that question, we have to come to terms with the words that we've used to proclaim who we are, what we in the church call evangelism, and our actions, what the church calls mission. For if we aren't clear about the relationship between our words and our actions, it can make it hard to come to terms with our past. Our family or country, for instance, might have talked a good game about the values they professed, but later their actions might have undercut the rhetoric. Well, the beauty of Jesus' example in this morning's gospel reading is that there is no disconnect between his words and his actions. One flowed naturally from the other. And in fact, Jesus went one step further and made it clear that you cannot have one without the other. For Jesus' inability to heal or act was the direct result of his hometown's inability to receive his words. And Jesus sent the disciples out into the world, noting that if they too wanted to effect healing and change, that they would have to pay attention to that dynamic and not waste their time and energy trying to heal those who wouldn't listen. And that, my friends, is a powerful lesson for us this 4th of July weekend. For it is a reminder that we cannot celebrate things like family, country, and faith unless we make an honest attempt to integrate our words and our deeds. Now, we've seen what an effort looks like in an ancient context to do that through the experience of Jesus and the disciples, but what would that process of putting words and actions together in modern times look like? Well, pastor or preacher Thomas Long did a great job of spelling that out when he talked about the experience folks had one year at the graduation ceremony at Emory University. Now, the graduation ceremony that year was filled with a whole series of people who had been awarded honorary degrees by the university. And the students, Long noted, were bored out of their minds with all of the ritual and through all of the speeches that the honorary graduates had given. But there was one recipient of an honorary degree who grabbed their attention and kept them spellbound. It was a man by the name of Hugh Thompson. Now, it was sort of ironic, Thomas Long noted, that Thompson was on the stage that day because he was undoubtedly the least academically educated person on the stage. For Thompson had dropped out of college in order to enlist in the Army back in the 1960s. And instead of getting a college degree, he had become a helicopter pilot. So what made Thompson's speech stand out? Well, I'll let Thomas Long answer that in his own words. He wrote, on March 16, 1968, Hugh Thompson was flying a routine patrol in Vietnam when he happened to fly over the village of My Lai, just as the American troops, under the command of Lieutenant William Calley, were slaughtering dozens of unarmed villagers, including old men, women, and children. So Thompson set his helicopter down between the troops and the remaining civilians, and he ordered his tail gunner to train the helicopter guns on the American soldiers. Then he ordered the gunmen to stop killing the villagers. Hugh Thompson's action, Thomas Long wrote, saved the lives of dozens and dozens of people. Now, you would have thought that Hugh Thompson's courageous actions would have been immediately recognized, but they weren't. In fact, Thompson was almost court-martialed. It took 30 years before the Army finally awarded him what's called the Soldier's Medal. So, as this man whose life was about doing what Jesus did, integrating words and actions, as he stood at the microphone that day, Long noted that the rowdy student body grew completely still. And as he spoke, Hugh Thompson kept it simple. He spoke primarily about the values that his parents had taught him when he was a child that motivated his courageous actions that day. Namely, something called the Golden Rule, which says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The graduates who had spent years pursuing undergraduate and graduate degrees were blown away by the simple wisdom Thompson had learned from what he described as the words from Sunday school and the words from worship. They were so enamored with his speech that at its end, those young folks leapt to their feet and gave him the standing ovation. And that, my friends, is how we modern folks can take the wisdom from Jesus' teaching today and use it to transform things like our families, our country, and ourselves. For like Jesus and Hugh Thompson, we can return to those formative years of our lives and draw from the well of wisdom, the words and the acts provided. But friends, we must never make the mistake of simply getting stuck in the past. No, we must use those words and actions to challenge our family, our country, and even ourselves to become the very best version of ourselves that we can be this very day. And if others resist, as Jesus warned, we don't have to hate them. We don't have to self-righteously judge or exclude them. No, we do what Jesus said. We simply keep moving forward, shaking the dust of their resistance from our souls so that we can follow the momentum that will propel us forward in our journey of becoming. My prayer for us this day in closing is that we will have the wisdom to follow in the steps of great and patriotic Americans like Hugh Thompson, so that we can do what he did, become the best version of ourselves possible. May it be so. Amen.